Well, this is good news, but a little bit embarrassing. Turns out I don't have a bad bearing in the alternator that's doing all that squeaking. It was simply related to a temporary coat hanger I had installed around the catalytic converter while I was changing the tailpipe. Once that was cut off, all the squeaking stopped. No need for a new alternator. We're looking at the mighty 1995 Pontiac Grand Am SE with a 3.1 liter engine. It's got some issues with the alternator. Started making a little squeak the other day that got worse whenever I turned on the headlights or the defroster or put on the brakes, anything like that. A little chirp, chirp, chirp. Chirping is still there. I don't know if I'll be able to get it on camera or not. When I first heard the little chirping, I was pretty sure it was the alternator because it changed every time I added a load, an electrical load to the system. Usually if it's idler pulley or any other pulley, well, the idler pulley would typically be more of a constant chirp, but the other types of chirps get worse or better depending on the load. So if it was the power steering pump, when you turn the steering wheel, you'd hear it get worse or better. The alternator, you're going to hear it as you add or remove electrical load. You're going to hear the pitch change of the little chirp or grind. If it was the water pump, you'd probably, be able to hear it coming from here. And then eventually it would cause the seal to go bad and you'd be leaking water. But in this case, no water's leaking. But a couple little tricks of the trade. You can take a long screwdriver, put the tip of the screwdriver onto the alternator, and then put the back end of the screwdriver up to your ear, and you can definitely hear noises. A lot better when you do that. Now I can definitely hear a whirring noise. Doesn't sound good. It's about the same volume coming from the front to the back. So based on the old screwdriver test, I couldn't tell you whether it's the front or the back. But oh! Okay, you hear that little rattle? At first I thought that was a bearing in the alternator because when I would turn on headlights, defroster, anything that added load, step on the brakes, it would definitely start to rattle and squeak more. Definitely seemed like an alternator. But today I did more of the screwdriver to the ear and I cannot hear that squeaking in the alternator. So I got to poking around a little bit and see if you can hear this change. I put a little pressure on the catalytic converter here, and all that squeaking and rattling stops. And what I've determined is I had put this coat hanger on here a while back when I put on a new tailpipe. And that stupid little coat hanger is what's doing all the squeaking and squawking up there. So I thought I would just leave it on there for good protection in case, 3 years from now this tailpipe rusted out. But we'll take this thing off and we'll avoid the need for a new alternator. Like I say, from sitting inside the car, every time I would step on the brake, turn the headlights on, turn on the defroster, whatever, I'd hear that chirp, chirp, chirping. I thought, well, it has to be related to this alternator. It's getting a load on it, putting a load on the bearing, and then that bearing starts to chirping. But none of that chirping's coming from up here. What was happening is as you would add load to the engine would start to shake a little bit more, and then the squeak would get louder. So actually it wasn't adding load to the alternator that was causing the alternator to squeak. It was causing the engine to start to shake more, and then that made this rattle more pronounced. So I'm going to get this coat hanger off of there. Now that's an interesting one. Whole new tone there. I'm going to get that coat hanger off there and see if it all goes away. Of course, right now it's not going to squeak or rattle since I've been messing around with right here. Must have been, if I'd have put some oil up in here, it might have solved it. But anyway, we're going to solve this problem the quick and easy way. There we go. We don't need an alternator. Again, that coat hanger was just a temporary thing while I was putting on a new tailpipe. That catalytic converter was hanging way down and I was driving it for a couple days, so I put that coat hanger on there as a temporary deal. Thought I'd just leave it, but it caused me problems.